Welcome and welcome back to Thank God for Grace and Mercy. My name is Tony, and this is Reading the Bible in a Year. Today is day 109, and we're going to be covering 1 Samuel 28 through 31, which will finish the book of 1 Samuel, and then we'll read Psalm 18. Yesterday, we read a bunch of Psalms, Psalm 17, 35, 54, and 63. But really, what's kind of more on my mind today is just it's Holy Saturday. It's the day after that Jesus was crucified, and hasn't yet risen from the dead. That happens tomorrow, Easter Sunday, the day we celebrate the resurrection of Christ. But today, people typically fast. They have silence and just, I think, reflect on what Jesus did for all of us. Jesus just shows so much love through the act of going to the cross for all of us. So yesterday, hopefully y'all might have got a chance to see The Passion of the Christ. I got to watch it at home, and then my wife watched it with me, and then she went and watched it with the church again last night. So I think it's a great movie. Never seen it. I highly recommend giving it a watch, even though I'll tell you now it's difficult to watch, and I don't think I've ever watched it without crying. It's powerful. So highly recommend that. Also, just on other little things I've been doing lately, saw a really cool podcast. Sean Ryan again. I like Sean Ryan. He has Lee Strobel, which I love Lee Strobel, and John Burke together. So Lee Strobel is the atheist who had gone to law school at Yale, so he's a smart guy, but just thought that God was fairy tales and myths and legends, so went out to disprove Jesus. And in trying to disprove him, he used all his legal studies and the way you look at legal documents to prove truth. He became not only a Christian, he had become a pastor, and it completely changed his life. And John Burke was either an atheist or an agnostic, was an engineer, but started looking at NDEs, which is near-death experiences. And he studied thousands of them. So these are things that happen, like the Howard Storm story, where people die, but not completely dead, but they're dead for a minute, and they have an experience, and they talk about it. So anyway, it was really amazing. So if you've got a couple hours, it's long. It's a great podcast to watch. And then I watched a few, even John Burke's podcasts about NDEs. I thought it was really, really very, very interesting, So for extra bonus, if you want to get out there, see some of that stuff, I recommend it. I liked it a lot. So without further ado, let's say a quick prayer and we'll get into the reading for today. So, dear Heavenly Father, I just want to thank you so much for all the blessings you give to me, Lord. Lord, thank you for my wife, and thank you for my family. Thank you for the relationship I have with my friends, Lord. Thank you for letting me live in paradise. Lord, thank you for letting me find you and build a relationship with you. Thank you for loving me so much. Thank you for loving all of us so much. Your love is amazing, Lord, and we thank you for it. Lord, just help us get closer to you by reading the Bible. Lord, open our eyes to see the message from today, open our ears to hear it, and open our hearts to receive it. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen. So this is the end of the book of Samuel. 1 Samuel 28 through 31, and then I'll read Psalm 18. 1 Samuel 28. During this time, the Philistines mustered their troops to make war on Israel. Achish said to David, "You can count on this. You're marching with my troops, you and your men." And David said, "Good. Now you'll see for yourself what I can do." "Great," said Achish. "I'm making you my personal bodyguard for life." Saul prayed, but God didn't answer. Samuel was now dead. All Israel had mourned his death and buried him in Ramah, his hometown. Saul had long since cleaned out all those who had held seances with the dead. The Philistines had mustered their troops and camped at Shunem. Saul had assembled all Israel and camped at Gilboa. But when Saul saw the Philistine troops, he shook in his boots, scared to death. Saul prayed to God, but God didn't answer, neither by dream, nor by sign, nor by prophet. So Saul ordered his officials, "Find me someone who can call up spirits so I may go and seek counsel from those spirits." His servants said, "There's a witch at Endor." Saul disguised himself by putting on different clothes. Then taking 2 men with him, he went under the cover of night to the woman and said, "I want you to consult a ghost for me. Call up the person I name." The woman said, "Just hold on now. You know what Saul did, how he swept the country clean of mediums. Why are you trying to trap me and get me killed?" Saul swore solemnly, "As God lives, you won't get any trouble for this." The woman said, "So whom do you want me to bring up?" "Samuel. Bring me Samuel." When the woman saw Samuel, she cried out loudly to Saul, "Why did you lie to me? You're Saul." The king told her, "You have nothing to fear, but what do you see?" "I see a spirit ascending from the underground." "And what does he look like?" Saul asked. "An old man ascending, robed like a priest." Saul knew it was Samuel. He fell down, face to the ground, and worshipped. Samuel said to Saul, "Why have you disturbed me by calling me up?" "Because I'm in deep trouble," said Saul. "The Philistines are making war against me, and God has deserted me. He doesn't answer me anymore, either by prophet or by dream, and so I'm calling on you to tell me what to do." "Why ask me?" said Samuel. "God has turned away from you and is now on the side of your neighbor. God has done exactly what he told you through me, ripped the kingdom right out of your hands and given it to your neighbor. It's because you did not obey God, refused to carry out his seething judgment on Amalek, that God does to you what he is doing today. Worse yet, God is turning Israel, along with you, over to the Philistines. Tomorrow, you and your sons will be with me. And yes, indeed, God is giving Israel's army up to the Philistines." Saul dropped to the ground, felled like a tree, terrified by Samuel's words. There wasn't an ounce of strength left in him. He'd eaten nothing all day and all night. The woman, realizing that he was in deep shock, said to him, "Listen to me. I did what you asked me to do. Put my life in your hands in doing it. Carried out your instructions to the letter. It's your turn to do what I tell you. Let me give you some food. Eat it. It will give you strength so you can get on your way." He refused. "I'm not eating anything." But when his servants joined the woman in urging him, he gave in to their pleas, picked himself up off the ground, and sat on the bed. The woman moved swiftly. She butchered a grain-fed calf she had, and took some flour and kneaded it, and baked some flatbread. Then she served it all up for Saul and his servants. After dining handsomely, they got up from the table and were on their way that same night. 1 Samuel 29. The Philistines mustered all their troops at Aphek. Meanwhile, Israel had made their camp at the spring of Jezreel. As the Philistine warlords marched forward by regiments and divisions, David and his men were bringing up the rear with Achish. The Philistines' officers said, "What business do these Hebrews have being here?" Achish answered the officers, "Don't you recognize David, ex-servant of King Saul of Israel? He's been with me a long time. I found nothing to be suspicious of, nothing to complain about, from the day he defected from Saul until now." Angry with Achish, the Philistine officers said, "Send this man back to where he came from. Let him stick to his normal duties. He's not going into battle with us. He'd switch sides in the middle of the fight. What better chance to get back in favor with his master than by stabbing us in the back? Isn't this the same David they celebrate at their parties, singing, 'Saul kills by the 1,000, David by the 10,000'? So Achish had to send for David and tell him, "As God lives, you have been a trusty ally, excellent in all the ways you have worked with me, beyond reproach in the ways you have conducted yourself. But the warlords don't see it that way, so it's best that you leave peacefully now. It's not worth it, displeasing the Philistine warlords." "But what have I done?" said David. "Have you a single cause for complaint from the day I joined up with you until now? Why can't I fight against the enemies of my master, the king?" "I agree," said Achish. "You're a good man as far as I'm concerned. God's angel. But the Philistine officers were empathetic. He's not to go with us into battle. So get an early start, you and the men who came with you. As soon as you have light enough to travel, go." David rose early, he and his men. By daybreak, they were on their way back to Philistine country. The Philistines went on to Jezreel. 1 Samuel 30. David's strength was in his God. 3 days later, David and his men arrived back in Ziklag. Amalekites had raided the Negev and Ziklag. They tore Ziklag to pieces and then burned it down. They captured all the women, young and old. They didn't kill anyone, but drove them like a herd of cattle. By the time David and his men entered the village, it had been burned to the ground, and their wives, sons, and daughters all taken prisoner. David and his men burst out in loud wails, wept and wept until they were exhausted with weeping. David's 2 wives, Ahinoam of Jezreel and Abigail, widow of Nabal of Carmel, had been taken prisoner along with the rest, and suddenly David was in even worse trouble. There was talk among the men, bitter over the loss of their families, of stoning him. David strengthened himself with trust in his God. He ordered Abiathar, the priest, son of Ahimelech, "Bring me the ephod so I can consult God." Abiathar brought it to David. Then David prayed to God, "Shall I go after these raiders? Can I catch them?" The answer came, "Go after them. Yes, you'll catch them. Yes, you'll make the rescue." David went, he and the 600 men with him. They arrived at the brook Besor, where some of them dropped out. David and 400 men kept up the pursuit, but 200 of them were too fatigued to cross the brook Besor and stayed there. Some who went on came across an Egyptian in a field and took him to David. They gave him bread, and he ate, and he drank some water. They gave him a piece of fig cake and a couple of raisin muffins. Life began to revive in him. He hadn't eaten or drunk a thing for 3 days and 3 nights. David said to him, "Who do you belong to? Where are you from?" "I'm an Egyptian slave of an Amalekite," he said. "My master walked off and left me when I got sick. That was 3 days ago. We had raided the Negev of the Kerethites, of Judah, and of Caleb. Ziklag was burned." David asked him, "Can you take us to the raiders?" "Promise me by God," he said, "that you won't kill me or turn me over to my old masters, and I'll take you straight to the raiders." He led David to them. They were scattered all over the place, eating and drinking, gorging themselves on all the loot they had plundered from Philistia and Judah. David pounced. He fought them from before sunrise until evening of the next day. None got away except for 400 of the younger men who escaped by riding off on camels. David rescued everything the Amalekites had taken, and he rescued his 2 wives. Nothing and no one was missing, young or old, son or daughter, plunder, or whatever. David recovered the whole lot. He herded the sheep and cattle before them, and they all shouted, "David's plunder!" Then David came to the 200 who had been too tired to continue with him and had dropped out at the brook Besor. They came out to welcome David and his band. As he came near, he called out, "Success!" But all the mean-spirited men who had marched with David, the rabble element, objected. "They didn't help in the rescue. They don't get any of the plunder we've recovered. Each man can have his wife and children, but that's it. Take them and go." "Families don't do this sort of thing." "Oh no, my brothers," said David as he broke up the arguments. "You can't act this way with what God gave us. God kept us safe. He handed over the raiders who attacked us. Who would ever listen to this kind of talk? The share of the one who stays with the gear is the share of the one who fights. Equal shares. Share and share alike." From that day on, David made that rule in Israel, and it still is. On returning to Ziklag, David sent portions of the plunder to the elders of Judah, his neighbors, with a note saying, "A gift from the plunder of God's enemies." He sent them to the elders in Bethel, Ramoth Negev, Jatir, Aror, Sipmoth, Estemoa, Rakal, Jerahmeelite cities, Kenite cities, Hormah, Bor Ashan, Athak, and Hebron, along with a number of other places David and his men went to from time to time. 1 Samuel 31. Saul and Jonathan, dead on the mountain. The Philistines made war on Israel. The men of Israel were in full retreat from the Philistines, falling left and right, wounded on Mount Gilboa. The Philistines caught up with Saul and his sons. They killed Jonathan, Abinadab, and Malchishua, Saul's sons. The battle was hot and heavy around Saul. The archers got his range and wounded him badly. Saul said to his weapon bearer, "Draw your sword and put me out of my misery, lest these pagan pigs come and make a game out of killing me." But his weapon bearer wouldn't do it. He was terrified. So Saul took the sword himself and fell on it. When the weapon bearer saw that Saul was dead, he too fell on his sword and died with him. So Saul, his 3 sons, and his weapon bearer, the men closest to him, died together that day. When the Israelites in the valley opposite and those on the other side of the Jordan saw that their army was in full retreat and that Saul and his sons were dead, they left their cities and ran for their lives. The Philistines moved in and occupied the sites. The next day, when the Philistines came to rob the dead, they found Saul and his 3 sons dead on Mount Gilboa. They cut off Saul's head and stripped off his armor. Then they spread the good news all through Philistine country in the shrines of their idols and among the people. They displayed his armor in the shrine of Ashtaroth. They nailed his corpse to the wall at Bethshan. The people of Jabesh Gilead heard what the Philistines had done to Saul. Their valiant men sprang into action. They traveled all night, took the corpses of Saul and his 3 sons from the wall at Bethshan, and carried them back to Jabesh, and burned off the flesh. Then they buried the bones under the tamarisk tree in Jabesh, and fasted in mourning for 7 days. That concludes the book of Samuel. Now we will read Psalm 18. Psalm 18, a David song, which he sang to God after being saved from all his enemies and from Saul. I love you, God. You make me strong. God is bedrock under my feet, the castle in which I live, my rescuing knight. My God, the high crag where I run for dear life, hiding behind the boulders, safe in the granite hideout. I sing to God, the praise lofty, and find myself safe and saved. The hangman's noose was tight at my throat. Devil waters rushed over me. Hell's ropes cinched me tight. Death traps barred every exit. A hostile world. I call to God. I cry to God to help me. From his palace he hears my calls. My cry brings me right into his presence, a private audience. Earth wobbles and lurches. Huge mountains shake like leaves, quake like aspen leaves, because of his rage. His nostrils flare, bellowing smoke. His mouth spits fire. Tongues of fire dart in and out. He lowers the sky. He steps down. Under his feet, an abyss opens up. He's riding a winged creature, swift on wind wings. Now he's wrapped himself in a trench coat of black cloud darkness, but his cloud brightness burst through, spraying hailstones and fireballs. Then God thundered out of heaven. The high God gave a great shout, spraying hailstones and fireballs. God shoots his arrows, pandemonium. He hurls his lightnings, a rout. The secret sources of ocean are exposed. The hidden depths of earth lie uncovered. The moment you roar in protest, let loose your hurricane anger. But me he caught. Reached all the way from sky to sea, he pulled me out of that ocean of hate, that enemy chaos, the void in which I was drowning. They hit me when I was down, but God stuck by me. He stood me up on a wide open field. I stood there saved, surprised to be loved. God made my life complete when I placed all the pieces before him. When I got my act together, he gave me a fresh start. Now I'm alert to God's ways. I don't take God for granted. Every day I review the way he works. I try not to miss a trick. I feel put back together, and I'm watching my step. God rewrote the text of my life when I opened the book of my heart to his eyes. The good people taste your goodness. The whole people taste your health. The true people taste your truth. The bad ones can't figure you out. You take the side of the down and out, but the stuck up you take down a notch. Suddenly, God, you floodlight my life. I'm blazing with glory, God's glory. I smash the bands of marauders. I vault the highest fences. What a God! His road stretches straight and smooth. Every God direction is road tested. Everyone who runs towards him makes it. Is there any God like God? Are we not at bedrock? Is not this the time the God who armed me, then aimed me in the right direction? Now I run like a deer. I'm king of the mountain. He shows me how to fight. I can bend a bronze bow. You protect me with salvation armor. You hold me with a firm hand. Caress me with your gentle ways. You cleared the ground under me, so my footing was firm. When I chased my enemies, I caught them. I didn't let them go till they were dead men. I nailed them. They were down for good. Then I walked all over them. You armed me well for this fight. You smashed the upstarts. You made my enemies turn tail, and I wiped out the haters. They cried uncle, but uncle didn't come. They yelled for God and got no for an answer. I ground them to dust. They gusted in the wind. I threw them out like garbage in the gutter. You rescued me from a squabbling people. You made me a leader of nations. People I'd never heard of served me. The moment they got wind of me, they listened. The foreign devils gave up. They came on their bellies, crawling from their hideouts. Live, God. Blessings from my rock, my free and freeing God, towering. This God sets things right for me and shut up the people who talked back. He rescued me from enemy anger. He pulled me from the grip of upstarts. He saved me from the bullies. That's why I'm thanking you, God, all over the world. That's why I'm singing songs that rhyme your name. God's king takes the trophy. God's chosen his beloved. I mean David and all his children, always. Recap. Day 109, 1 Samuel 28 through 31, and Psalm 18. The Philistines want to attack the Israelites, and King Achish is relying on his buddy David to help him out. After all, David has been making raids on Israel for a while now, right? No? Uh-oh. What will David do? The narrative leaves us with a cliffhanger. Not long ago, Saul had his second near-death experience with David. When you've stared death in the face and your former mentor dies, and you're being tormented by a demon, and you're about to lose your job, and one of your powerful enemies is attacking you, that's a lot to deal with. This doesn't excuse Saul's actions, though. On the contrary, many of his trials are the consequences of his own actions. He tries to inquire of God, but that falls through, which highlights an interesting pattern we see in Scripture. When someone asks God for direction, but they aren't following his existing directions, he often won't tell them anything new. Saul experienced this earlier in 1437. He's unrepentant, which is why God rejected him as king. It's all connected. So when he asks God what to do about the Phillies, God doesn't reply. Instead of repenting, Saul doubles down on his sin. He disguises himself and consults a medium, which God forbids. He's seeking answers from an enemy of Yahweh, asking for help, communicating with the dead, namely Samuel. What happens isn't a normal occurrence for this medium, because when she calls Samuel, he actually shows up, and she's shocked. She screams. So we can assume that whatever measure of power she normally operates in, whether fake or demonic, this rare occurrence is outside of her control. The narrator leaves us to assume that God has actually intervened here. What does Saul get for all his trouble? The same old prophecies, but with 2 extra bits of bad news. He and his sons will die tomorrow, and the Philistines will defeat Israel. Then we cut back to Achish, who is taking the Phillies to war with David in the tow. Lords of the other Philistine cities don't trust him and tell Achish to send him back home. Through their mistrust of David, God saves him from potentially having divided loyalties, which could disqualify him from serving as Israel's king. He goes back to his home in Philistia and sees the Amalekites have attacked while the Phillies are away at war. His city has been burned, his family has been taken captive, and his people want to kill him. In the midst of this tragic loss, he knows where to turn for hope and strength. He inquires of God. God says to pursue the Amalekites, and he'll win. Along the way, he meets an Egyptian who helps him. David has fled his homeland to escape his enemy, and he made a home in the midst of his other enemies, who were attacked by a third enemy, and then he gets help from another enemy. Wow. He has 400 men with him when he attacks, but 200 are too tired and stay behind. He raids the Amalekites and gets everything back, then shares the spoils with everyone, even the 200 who were exhausted. Some of the 400 aren't happy about this, but David shuts them down. He demonstrates God's generosity here, recognizing this is all a gift from God that he can freely share. When Saul fights the Phillies, he loses, and he and 3 of his sons die. 1 Chronicles 10:13-14 says Saul died for his breach of faith, and it references his visit to the medium. And remember, when God decapitated the Philly statue of their god Dagon, according to 1 Chronicles 10:10, it seems the Philistines took the head of Saul and affixed it to the headless body of Dagon. After the battle, the Israelites and the surrounding cities flee, and the Phillies take over their towns. Today's God Shot. David wrote Psalm 18 on the day God saved him from all his enemies. He testifies to God's goodness through his trials. While he makes a lot of claims about his righteousness, he also says it and all his blessings are gifts from God. It's God who makes his way blameless, and God is the one who equips him, delivers him, and protects him. 1 Samuel 30, verse 6 says, David strengthened himself in the Lord, his God. He doesn't strengthen himself in himself. He strengthens himself in the Lord, his God. God is the source of all the good things we offer back to him, and he's where the joy is. Thank you for tuning in. I hope you have a good Holy Saturday. Tomorrow is Easter, and we'll be back. Tomorrow we're going to be reading a bunch of Psalms. So I'll see you then.